Good morning, Golden Bear fans. Welcome to the Tell the Whole Damn World podcast. I'm your host, Reza Serafinejad, and it's another great day to be a bear. It's the second week of December 2024. In this week's episode, we are delighted to welcome Dr. Nadesan Permaul to the show. For those of you who may not know Nad, he's an icon around the UC Berkeley campus who epitomizes what it means to dearly love the university and everything it represents. He has spent his entire career in service to the university, starting as a student in 1967, and has inspired generations of Cal students, including yours truly and my co-host, Ahmad Anderson. We could spend some time talking about the men's basketball team and their most recent game against Stanford, but quite honestly, I'm not in the mood. Let's just move past that and plan to pay them back when we play them later this season on the farm. And hey, no matter how the game ended on the hardwood, there's no denying that we've got the axe. And speaking of football, it's official now. The Cal football team will be playing in the Art of Sport LA Bowl, hosted by Gronk, on Wednesday, December 18th, at 6 p.m. at SoFi Stadium in LA. Congratulations to the football team for earning that bowl bid. They'll play against the UNLV Rebels, who had an outstanding season. Let's hope our boys can make Larry Johnson and Stacey Augmon disappointed. Moving forward, we're going to do our best to try to keep our episodes between 40 and 45 minutes in length. We realize that the first couple of episodes have run a little long, but then again, we've had a lot to say. We're also going to launch a new segment to spotlight a notable chapter in Cal history. And we're going to kick off that segment right now with a few words about the free speech movement at Cal. This week in Cal history. Did you know that we just passed the 60-year anniversary of the culmination of the free speech movement at Cal? It's one of the most notable and pivotal periods in the history of our university. The free speech movement began earlier in 1964 when students at the University of California at Berkeley protested restrictions on political activity on campus. Students demanded the right to advocate for civil rights and other causes without university interference. Tensions escalated in October 1964 when Jack Weinberg, a student at the time, was arrested for distributing political materials, leading to a massive protest around a police car on Sproul Plaza for 32 hours. After months of protests and sit-ins on campus, thousands of students peacefully occupied Sproul Hall on December 2nd, 1964. The students demanded that the university administration drop charges against protest leaders, lift the ban on political activity, and recognize their free speech rights. About 800 students were arrested the following day, on December 3rd, making it one of the largest mass arrests in California's history. Despite the arrests, the protests remained peaceful, drawing public attention and sympathy for the students' cause. The sit-in and subsequent arrests pressured the university administration and the Board of Regents to address the students' demands. And on December 8th, 1964, the Regents met and formally lifted the ban on political organizing. They also affirmed that students had the right to engage in free speech and advocacy on campus as long as it did not disrupt the university's operations. The free speech movement became a symbol of student activism and civil liberties and inspired similar movements across the United States in the 1960s. It also helped shift the perception of students as passive learners to active participants in societal change. Sproul Plaza remains a hub for free speech and activism to this day. As former Chancellor Carol Christ says, the public expression of many sharply divergent points of view is fundamental both to our democracy and to our mission as a university. Personally, I think it's worth noting that in our current extremely divided political environment, it's more critical than ever to be tolerant of and to listen to voices that may not be in alignment with your way of thinking. You don't have to agree with everything somebody says, but we should support every individual's right to free speech. That's how we continue to learn and grow as people and as a society. And I feel strongly that in our country today, we all need to do more to embrace one another as fellow Americans and leave behind this period of extreme divisiveness. But enough said about that. Next up, it's time to introduce you to our featured guest. And now it's time for our featured guest. I'll be bringing in my co-host, Cal legend, Ahmad Anderson, and together we will introduce you to Dr. Nadesan Permaul, a beloved Cal icon who has inspired generations of students to be passionate about our incredible university. Nad earned his bachelor's, master's, and PhD at the University of California at Berkeley, and has held numerous administrative positions on campus, most notably serving as the president of the Cal Alumni Association from 2003 through 2005. He's currently a lecturer in the Department of Rhetoric. Nad has been deeply involved with Cal for over 50 years, since first arriving on the scene as a freshman in 1967, and is well known throughout the campus community as a wonderful steward of the university's traditions and history. It's hard for me to think of anyone more passionate about Cal, and that's saying quite a bit. Welcome, Nad, and thank you for making the time to be on our podcast today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much, Reza. And hello to my comrade, Ahmad Anderson, whom I've known since we met as graduate assistant and student in Sandy Muir's political science class.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have you here, Nad. And I'm excited about the opportunity to sit and chat with you. I'm sure not only myself, Reza, but the entire Bear Territory will learn a lot more about who you are and what a stalwart you are at the University of California at Berkeley.
Yeah, and that just actually brings me up to my very first question. And even though I've known Nad for decades, I don't know if I really know or understand the story of why it is that you've become such a passionate advocate for all things University of California related. I mean, you are the personification, I guess I would say, of what it is to be a fan of not only Cal sports teams, but also the university itself and everything that it represents. So where did that all come from for you?
Well, I grew up in Los Angeles and went to high school there. My brother was 10 years older than I was, and he had attended UCLA. And when I was applying to colleges, he told my father that there were only two schools in the state that I should really consider, Stanford and Cal. And I could not have afforded to have attended Stanford. So I applied to Cal, and it turned out I was the only student from my high school graduating class who attended Cal in the fall of 1967. So for me, it was an entirely new experience. And I'm incredibly grateful for that opportunity to come to Northern California and to become part of the Cal community. My first day on campus, after I unpacked in my Unit 2 residence hall room in Griffiths Hall, I walked up to the campus, walked around it, and ended up at Memorial Stadium. And it was a Sunday after Cal had defeated Oregon. And I walked through the stadium, and having grown up in Los Angeles, I'd only known about Cal playing UCLA in football. But for me, the big game in Los Angeles was UCLA and USC. But Memorial Stadium looked so beautiful. And I walked up to the western rim and looked out across the bay And I thought to myself, what a beautiful place. And I think I began to fall in love immediately with Berkeley and with Cal.
Yeah. It's hard not to. When you take a look at that view, I know exactly what you mean. Oftentimes, I guess I take it for granted a little bit because I was born and raised here, and same thing with Ahmad. And you see these amazingly picturesque vistas and things that, again, we just take for granted because we see it all the time. But we are so very fortunate and lucky to live where we live. And I tell you, the founders of the university certainly couldn't have picked a better place to build the university because it's just it's breathtaking for sure. You've done a lot of different things, and I guess that's the thing is, for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure that's most everyone, Nad was actually my boss when I worked on campus in the Department of Parking and Transportation, and under his leadership, we actually brought the Class Pass program to reality, which is still going strong. And you were the president of the Cal Alumni Association and for a few years, and then I believe you were the director of the ASUC as well, right?
Well, I had an absolutely fortunate time at the university, which is probably one of the reasons why I have remained in this community since I was a freshman. I majored in political science. I knew what I wanted to major in from the day I arrived, and I did my BA. I did my master's and my doctorate in political theory, which is a field in which I'm passionate and which I still teach. I taught for 27 years until this past spring. I began as a student volunteer in the Department of Recreational Sports, which was just a few small offices in the old Harmon gym.
Yeah.
And when I joined, I worked as a student employee in a variety of different roles. And eventually, I was offered a full-time position to oversee the recreation programs for the department. And then I had the good fortune to obtain the position of the executive assistant to the associate vice chancellor. And I worked there for 5 years. And then when we had the Loma Prieta earthquake and then the Oakland Hills fire, the campus did not have an emergency preparedness officer.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been working in communications for my boss at facilities, and I was recommended to the campus and became the first manager of the emergency preparedness program for a decade. And in the meantime, I went back and finished my doctorate in political science. And for the last 30 years, I've been teaching in the rhetoric department. Later, I was offered an opportunity to teach a course in sociology, which I did for 3 years. And then my home department, political science, invited me back. And for 27 years, I taught a class there through last spring. What I would do is I would flex my time as a full-time employee and teach one class each semester while I was doing work as well. And I was fortunate enough to become the director of the ASUC, a position I held for 5 years until I retired after 32 years working at the university as an administrator. And I've had some interesting roles during that time. When Oski got in trouble at a Cal basketball game for throwing a cake at the family of a star guard from Oregon State.
Gary Payton.
I beg your pardon?
Gary Payton.
Gary Payton.
I was there. I remember that very well.
The campus did not have any contact with the Oski committee because the Oski committee historically was a secret committee. But I had contacts with the students who were in the committee, and so I became Oz Deluxe. I became Oski's first academic advisor for approximately a decade, and I still have contacts with the committee. I also had the good fortune to be inducted in 1975 into the Order of the Golden Bear. And later, I became, for almost a decade, I became the alumni secretary. And in the early 2000s, I was invited to join the board of the Cal Alumni Association. And eventually, in 2003, I became president for 2 years. So I've really had a charmed life at Berkeley and had the good fortune to be involved. I met my wife at Cal. She lived in the residence hall next to mine, and we just celebrated our 45th wedding anniversary. And my son, who graduated from Cal in 2014, was a member of the Cal Band for 4 years and is now on the Cal Band Alumni Association as their vice president. And we are a Cal family, if you will. So, all I can say is that I have had a tremendous good fortune to be associated with the university all these years.
That's quite a story.
I'm flashing back. Well, as I hear Nad tell this story, it's like I'm living my life again as a student at Cal. I arrived at Cal in 1978, and in my freshman year there, I took a number of courses: Astro 10, Poli-Sci 1. I was even in the Great Subject A course, and my class was in PSL, this large lecture hall, and I didn't really know anybody there. And I sat in that class, and lo and behold, Nad was the grad advisor in the class, and Sandy Muir was the professor. Sandy Muir was great, made it feel like I was in his office fireside chat. I learned later, probably a week and a half, 2 weeks later, remind you, this is a quarter back in the day, my friend told me, he said, "Ahmad, why have you not been showing up to class?" I said, "I'm showing up to class. What are you talking about?" "No, you're supposed to attend sections." "Huh? What's a section?" "Said, you're in my section." But I'll never forget my experience of Nad in that class. His ability to work with Professor Muir, who ended up being my advisor in political science. After that class, I decided to major in political science. I became great friends with Nad as a student. He was my mentor. He helped me navigate my way through the political science department. He recommended that I work with Professor Muir. But from that point on, my relationship with Nad began to blossom. As he was telling that story, I walked that same path with him as a student, and then later as somebody going on to eventually work at the university for 13 years, while, of course, as you heard his story, he was still there. And so we consistently passed each other. But I tell you, Nad, not only hearing your story and what you've given to the university, I want to share with you that how much you've given to me, sir. You are quite the inspiration, my friend, and quite a mentor to me. And if some people would say that, and my father said to me, you know you've done your job when your mentee becomes the mentor. And Nad will say to you, and has said to me that humbles me, Ahmad, you're no longer my mentee. You are now a mentor. And so for that, I love you, brother. I love you a lot.
Well, we're old blues together, and
Yes.
we're deep old blues. I want to go back and mention something that I didn't say previously. I mentioned that I was on the freshman rally committee, in those days known as the Brick Moeller Society, named after Cal's first four-year All-American from the 1920s. And that introduced me to the spirit of Cal. And I became absolutely entranced with it. I went to the Bancroft Library, sat down in a chair, and began reading the Blue and Golds from their original publication as far as I could to learn the history of the university. And the first football game I attended in 1967 as a freshman, when the Cal band came bursting out of the North Tunnel and the Bears stunned University of Michigan in the final minute of the fourth quarter to defeat them, I was sold. And I was there when Ahmad and the Golden Bears stunned Stanford in 1982. And I have been to every big game since my freshman year, save the COVID game. So it's been 57 years for me attending big games, including the one where we just defeated the Cardinal and our sterling quarterback, Mendoza, threw that exhilarating touchdown pass at the end of the fourth quarter. And I happened to have the good fortune of talking to him and meeting him. And he is as wonderful a young man as Ahmad was as a student, and he is as a person. And that's the type of person, to me, that the University of California, in both its academic and its extracurricular programs, has always attracted. And one of the reasons why I have remained part of this community, first and foremost, because of its academic excellence and the types of people and students that you encounter, but also because of the wide variety and diversity of students. And I've been fortunate to meet these students across time and space, and Ahmad was certainly one of them.
You touched on a lot of different things there, Nad, and to touch on what Ahmad said as well. The idea that I've always looked at you primarily, first and foremost, as an academic, 100%. Like, you carry yourself and your presence is all about academics, and I can't respect you more for that. And at the same time, however, you have this passion for Cal athletics as well. And that has always inspired me. This is what we all should aspire to be like, to take the academics extremely seriously, to excel in that as much as possible, as much as you're able to. And then also be passionate about our football team, our basketball team, all of the different sports that Cal sponsors. And sports, to me, and I think this is something that's undeniable, is the driver that brings the whole campus community together. And again, at a place that's as diverse as Berkeley, everybody's off doing their own thing, that the sports programs, they bring people together in support of the university. And to hear how you first became such a passionate fan, reading all those old Blue and Gold yearbooks from years past, that's pretty special.
Well, I want to say also that at Cal, you learn as much outside of the classroom as you do inside the classroom. I attended political rallies on the campus. I listened to speakers in Sproul Plaza. And for me, it was the connection with my academic work. You learned theory, but you also lived practice. And that, I think, is what makes Cal students so remarkable. When they leave Berkeley and go out into the world, they are prepared to live and participate in the broader communities of which they are a part, bringing what they've learned in the classroom into their lives. And Ahmad is an example, running for political office in his community. That sense of tying his education to the broader world in which he lives is one of the things that makes Cal so special to me. And yes, athletics does have the ability to bring people together, but it's part of this wonderful melange of experiences which students can enjoy at Berkeley. They can be parts of the ASUC. They can participate in various student-run programs on the campus. They can work in the community as volunteers. They can be serious students. And then they go on a Saturday afternoon to Memorial Stadium to cheer for the Golden Bears, a program which was initiated by students and run by students from its inception in the 19th century all the way to 1960. By the way, the Golden Bears never won a Rose Bowl after the students relinquished their control of athletics, which is painful to me. Nevertheless, Cal Athletics is simply one of the many aspects of the Berkeley community that are a part of its long and storied tradition as the first public university in the state of California, the flagship of the University of California, which set the standard for public higher education across the United States. Berkeley was the first public university to be acknowledged among the private elites as a top institution beginning in 1930, and we haven't relinquished that position since. I feel fortunate to be a minor aspect of that and to have the opportunity to teach among the illustrious faculty that we have on the campus. I'm just a small piece of that, and it is my good fortune that I've had that opportunity.
I was simply going to ask, just because you've been so intertwined with so many different programs and departments, and it's like Ahmad said this in our last interview with David Ortega, that when the university called, he answered. And it seems like it's the same thing with you. When the university has had a need for something, you have answered that call. And are there any specific programs or things in particular that come to mind that you would like to let people know about to help support and to shed a little more light on those programs around the university?
Well, since 1960 and the advent of the multi-university, science and technology have dominated the institutions of higher education across the United States. And as they have done so, they've also dominated both federal funding and private giving. And that's why we have the outstanding, not only professional schools, but schools of engineering. We have chemistry, mathematics, all those programs that are so well respected and funded. Unfortunately, the liberal arts university, which had dominated from the 19th century all the way through the 1950s, has struggled to maintain its importance in the world of public and private higher education across America. And if anything, I would like to draw attention to the need for support for all of those programs in the humanities, which are so important in helping to shape people's perspectives, to educate them on how to think and to write, and how to enable them to be good citizens. Those are things that you don't necessarily obtain automatically in technical fields. And you need to have that balance between the humanities and the sciences in order to build a well-rounded student and citizen, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that. And one other question just came to mind that, Ahmad's talked about it when we've spoken with him, but is there a particular professor or course that really had an impact on you when you were a student at Cal?
Well, first of all, let me say, even my teachers in high school had a tremendous impact on me, who introduced me to looking at the world in a broader and more interesting perspective. And then I came to Cal, and my first class in political theory in Poli-Sci 1, I was introduced to Plato. And boy,
Yes, yes,
did he have an influence on me. And from
yes,
then on, Norman Jacobson, Hannah Pitkin,
yes.
Michael Rogan, these tremendous professors in political theory in the political science department. But other professors as well, Sandy Muir, Jyotirindra Dasgupta. There were so many professors that I had in political science that inspired me to pursue a master's and a PhD rather than go to law school. And I always wanted to teach. Unfortunately, I was not able to secure a tenured position. But when I was given the opportunity to teach as a lecturer in 3 humanities courses, rhetoric, sociology, and political science, I leapt at that opportunity, and it has fulfilled my life and enabled me to keep active in thinking and learning. And I'm truly grateful for that. What's amazing about Cal is that in spite of all the challenges, both financial and political, it has remained the bright and shining light of American public higher education. And for that, I am absolutely humbled and appreciative.
You know, one of the things that, as I'm wearing my Cal Alumni Board shirt here, there are a variety of different paths that students can take. I think the joy of being at Berkeley, as Nat has pointed out, is that diversity. The diversity of not only the ability to study whatever you want to study, or sit in classes, if you will, but also the diversity of the population of students we have there. But the greatest piece of all that each of that brings to the table is the diversity of thought and the diversity of thought leadership that you're exposed to. Share a little bit, as you can, Nat, about an organization and that we belong to there, the Order of the Golden Bear, and what that means to you, and what that means to the engagement for students, and the value it brings to all the things that we love about Berkeley.
The Order of the Golden Bear was established in 1900 at the bequest of President Benjamin Knight Wheeler, who was concerned that even at that time, with a campus of only a few thousand students, there was a lack of unity and cohesion in terms of communicating issues between students, faculty, and staff. So the order was created in order to create a forum in which those groups could get together and on a regular basis discuss issues that were important to the undergraduates on the Berkeley campus. Later, UCLA created its Order of the Golden Bruin, and even UC Davis had a group called Swords and Sandals. But only Cal has maintained a student-run organization since 1900. And Phoebe Apperson Hearst graciously funded the construction of a log cabin which rests between the men's faculty club and the women's faculty club, where the order has met since 1900. At sometimes it used to be the place where Pappy Waldorf had his team meals. It's a historic setting for students to get together. And they take no votes. Every other Tuesday they meet, and the students recommend subjects which they want to discuss. and a variety of students, faculty, staff, and alumni who are members of the order get together. It's run sort of like the ancient Roman Senate. You do not speak to one another. You speak to the warden, who is a student, and then you communicate in that fashion to the group. And you never clap or cheer or make sounds. You click your fingers in support, but you are encouraged to show tolerance, confidentiality, and frankness in your comments. And I think it's a wonderful organization to help students capture the essence of what Berkeley is all about, academically and socially.
Thank you, Nad. The other piece behind that is also that one of the greatest joys of attending Berkeley and being at Berkeley is, in my opinion, as you have well demonstrated, Nad, in your journey, and you continue to exhibit that, is as great as we are as a intellectual institution, that we have the ability to not lose the common touch is the foundation of which Berkeley is all about. And that resonates in the spirit.
Absolutely. And just compare our graduation rates as a public university to any public university in the United States. Certainly, we now have rivals within the UC system at UCLA, UC San Diego, UC Davis, UC Santa Barbara. But Berkeley has had consistently a almost sterling graduation rate because students understand the value of the degree that they're receiving, but also the education and the experience that they're receiving. Now, it's not always a bed of roses.
Yeah.
Students will tell you Cal can be tough. It can be tough academically, and sometimes it can feel tough outside of the classroom as well. That's all part of the experience. It's one of the things that all of us as citizens have to become accustomed to when we leave the confines of the ivory tower. And that's one of the good things about Berkeley, is it forces you to confront the real world that's outside there.
Yes.
And not to undermine the quality of our great rival, Stanford University. Remember, there are only 2 top 5 academic institutions in the United States, which are also Division I athletic powers, Cal and Stanford. But Stanford is a protected environment. It's the Dales of Arcady. You know, they only have 9,000 to 10,000 students there, undergraduates. And that world is shielded from the outside world, if you will. Not Cal. We are enmeshed into the community. We are constantly at war with the city of Berkeley on various issues, which is the way it should be.
That's life.
That's life, and we are 2 different institutions working toward common goals, but in different ways, diverse ways. And so I really applaud the reality, if you will, of Berkeley. And while I admire our colleagues down at Stanford, they offer a completely different experience. And let me point out that we bring in not just a diverse set of undergraduate students, but students who come from the original mission of the university, which was to bring those who could not get into the private elites an opportunity to gain a quality education. And so many of our students are first in their family to get a college education. Many of them come from homes with limited resources and incomes, and yet they're going to go out and change the world and also return to those communities and offer them the benefit of the education that they've received.
It's beautifully said. Really, both of you guys. I mean, you speak with so much passion and authority when it comes to all of this about what Cal and what the university means to both of you, and that's really well said. I think about it myself with my own journey coming through Cal, and my very fortunate inclusion in the Order of the Golden Bear also helped to shape the idea and the vision for this podcast as well, where it's this idea that we take what Ahmad Anderson came up with in the early 80s and extend that to all areas of the university. And the Order is a wonderful place where you can have access to other areas of the university where as a student you may not necessarily be able to interface or talk to folks. And it bridges that gap, just in the same way that we hope that this podcast will help to foster the Cal community and rally everyone to care more about the sports. The sports is great, absolutely. But we want people to come onto our show and tell the stories about why the University of California is so very special to them. And I really can't think of any better guest to have had on the show here than you, Nad. And thank you so much for making the time
Let me
today.
close with one comment.
Yeah, please.
When I was speaking to Fernando Mendoza the other night, he pointed out that his parents said to him the most important thing for him was to get his undergraduate degree and even pursue a postgraduate degree, his education. That was the most important thing to them. Being the starting quarterback for the California Golden Bears is frosting on the cake. It's that experience that's outside of the classroom, which Ahmad experienced, but is all part of what makes Cal, Cal. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and always go Bears.
Well, thank you, Nad. And I'll say to you, my man, you are our Fiat Lux, and we appreciate you.
I'm as old as that, that's for sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nad. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Go Bears.
All right.
Thank
So
you.
long, folks.
Go Bears.
Go Bears.
Go Bears. And that's a wrap on this week's episode. Please feel free to email us with any thoughts, suggestions, or questions at tellthewholedamnworld@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. And if you're just listening to these podcasts, you can also find us on YouTube to watch our videos. And you can always visit our website at tellthewholedamnworld.com and find links to listen or watch on the streaming service of your choice. See you next week. As Doctor Who famously says, we're all stories in the end. Make it a good one. What stories do you want to share? We want you to tell the whole damn world about it. Go Bears.